Hi. So in this video, let's kind of uh, finish up this project by adding in some UI so we can have a score and can be tracked, um, and also just some sound effects, right? Just to make our game feel a little nicer. So we'll start with these sounds, and then we'll do the UI. Both should be fairly straightforward. Both are fairly simple, which is why I saved them to the last part, right? We have all our game logic working, and now we can add this in here. So the asset pack that I got came in with sounds, so I'm just going to use those. There's two sound effects I'm going to use here, SFX coin and SFX, I think, disappear. You can click on any of these sound effects and you can preview them in the inspector. There's a play button at the very bottom, and you can also see the waveform. So if I hit play, that is what this sounds like. And disappear. Sounds like that. I think it makes for a good kind of you lost the game, death kind of sound effect, like an arcadey sound effect. So just to go over how audio works in Unity, there's kind of like three little components that go together. You have something called an audio source. This is something that plays an audio clip. These sounds here, each one of these are all audio clips. If I click on one and in the inspector, I can see it says the name of sound effects in parentheses audio clip. These are audio clips. An audio source takes an audio clip and it plays it. We have another special component called an audio listener. This listens to these sounds and then plays it out some kind of output. In this case, my speakers, maybe your earphones. When we make a scene and there is a new camera in there, the default camera it puts in the main camera, it comes in with this audio listener. In fact, this audio listener, like I can click on it and it expands, but there's no settings in here. It is just kind of what it is. It listens to audios. You only need one audio listener. It just attaches itself to whatever your main output device on your computer is set to, in your settings. And it's just going to listen to any audio sources that are playing, and it's going to output them through your speakers. In this case, because our sound effects are so simple, I'm just going to have the player play their own sound effects. So in iPlayer, I'm going to add that audio source. And now you can see this audio source has a bunch of options here. A lot of it has to do with things like, do we want this source to play its audio when the game starts, play on awake, whatever this source is it looping? You guys are hopefully going to have some background music in your game. For that, you could just toss a game object, add an audio source, set it to looping, and there you go. It's just going to keep playing your music over and over again. In this case, I don't need both play and awake or loop. And then finally, we have options here at the bottom that kind of refer to what is known as 3D audio, spatial audio. Not very useful in this game, but the idea of spatial audio is that the further we are away from the audio source, the quieter it is. The closer we get to it, the louder it is. I'm sure you guys have seen this in all amounts of 3D games. Ambient sounds like crackling fire. If you're playing like a multiplayer competitive game, things like footsteps, you hear them louder as you get closer. But from far away, they sound softer and softer. That's where we set these 3D audio settings. There's this slider here called Spatial Blend that says how 2D or 3D our audio is going to be. In this game, since there is no spatial audio, the Spatial Blend can be just left to 0 as our audio source. The main thing an audio source takes is this audio resource. This, I don't know why it's called audio resource in this case, but for us, it's going to be an audio clip. You could just take a clip and drag it in here. But this player, my player specifically, is going to play two sound effects, right? They're going to either play the coin sound effect, or they're going to play the disappear sound effect. So I can't just set an audio clip to this audio resource. We have to do that part in script. If you want to remove it, just click on it and hit the delete key. It'll go back to none. Next, let's go in and start scripting this. So there's a few things I'm going to need, right? I am going to need a reference to the two audio clips I want to play, and then I'm going to need a reference to the audio source itself so that I can play the audio on it. So I'll get a reference to 2 audio clips. I'll make 2 serialized fields. They're going to be audio clip. I'll call the first one coin SFX, and I'll make another one, and I will call it death SFX. I need a reference to the audio source. So audio source. I'm just going to call it source. This is not a serialized field because the audio source exists in the player, which means I can just do source equals to get component. What's the type of component we want to get? Well, it's an audio source. And then finally, when do we want to play these sound effects? We just want to play them on collisions with things, right? So we'll start with a coin, fairly easy. We've already increased the difficulty. I'm just gonna, at the end of this coin kind of thing, I'm just gonna say source dot play one shot. What play one shot does is it kind of combines 2 functionalities. It sets the audio clip that we pass, and then it also plays it one time. So you could do something like source.clip, set it to the clip. You could do source.clip equals sound effects, coin SFX, and then source.play. But, instead of doing that, we can combine them both together and do source.play one shot. And we just pass it this audio clip to play, which in this case, the audio clip is going to be the coin SFX. And in the case of the enemy, it's going to be source.play one shot, the death SFX. So let's see this in action. When I click on the player, we have these 2 new audio clips here. I'm going to find the audio clips in here. So you could navigate in your project, find the audio clip like SFX coin and drag it in. Or just another way of doing these things is, so I have death SFX and there's this little target kind of icon, like a circle with another filled circle inside. If I click that, this will show me any audio source that's in my project folder that is compatible. So you'll just see a list of everything, and you could search from here. So I could search for disappear, and there it is. That's the only disappear clip, and it's there. So you could kind of navigate through here, drag it in. As your project grows, if you just added too many assets, you could also just click here, filter, and search for it. So let's see this working. We'll try the coin one first. And I'm not sure if you can hear it. It might be a little soft, but it's playing the little coin sound effect. If by chance you don't hear it, there is a chance by default your game audio is muted. And we can see that up here where it says gizmos, stats, there's a little keyboard, there's a little audio icon, and that sometimes just defaults to muted. So if you don't hear anything, make sure that's unmuted first. Okay, so the coin sound effect worked, but I don't know if you noticed there, when we got hit by the enemy, it didn't play the sound effect. We just died. It was supposed to go play the disappearing sound effect, which it didn't. So coin works. But when that happens, it didn't play the sound effect. So what is happening here is in our script, when we enter this trigger, we just destroy the player game object. And so what this source, the audio source is in the player. So when we destroy the player, the audio source gets destroyed. We don't hear the audio at all. Now again, as with any programming problem, there's a billion ways, there's a lot of ways to fix it. And, you could, for example, have a different game object that holds the audio source and play it on there. But what I'm going to do is, instead of us just destroying the player, I'm going to make a new function, and I will call it void die. And really, when I destroy the player, there's 2 things that I really want to do, right? I want to disable the player from controlling the player with the mouse. And I want to have the sprite. I want to have this player game object not render anymore, right? So let's do those 2 things rather than just outright destroying the object. I'm going to make a Boolean, and I will call it can move, and it'll be equal to true. So when we're alive, we can move. When we die, we can't. And then in void update, before we run anything else, I'm just going to say if not can move, return. So basically, we're going to come here, we're going to check, can I move? If I cannot move, if can move is false, we're just going to return this function. We won't run anything below it. However, since it's going to be true by default, we'll keep running this. But when we die, we're going to set can move to false, so we cannot move anymore. The other thing is I just want to turn off the sprite renderer so we don't see the sprite anymore. So let's get a reference to the sprite renderer. Sprite renderer, I'll just call it SR. In start, let's get a reference to it. So SR equals get component sprite renderer. And finally, in this void die, we just want to do sr.enabled equals false. And when we die, we want to call our die function. So now, because the game object's not going to get destroyed, we should hear the sound effect. And there you go. Again, not too sure if you could hear it in the video, but it played. And awesome. It's as simple as that. Source.play one shot. If you did have music, all you need to do, I know this isn't music, but I just dragged the SFX magic, which should sound like this. But if you did have music, you just imagine this was a music clip and you dragged it in here. You just need to set it to play on awake and loop. And now, when I play it, we hear that audio clip playing over and over again. Again, this magic is not it's not an audio, not a music track, so it's going to sound weird. But it's as simple as that to add music. Just get your music in here, drag it into the level, just set it to looping. And that's perfect for our 2D dodge game kind of music. So we have our audio. Makes our game feel a little nicer, a little more interactive. Next, let's look at adding our UI, right? So right now, we don't have a notion of score, but that should be easy for us to add. But even if we did have score, our players can't see it. I could have a score. In fact, score should be so easy to add. Let's just go add the idea of score real quick. I'm going to have an integer called score because my score can't be in decimals. It's going to start as 0. Every time we collide with a coin, I'm going to say the score goes up by 1. I could do score plus equals to 1. I could do score equals to score plus 1. Or the most shorthand way of doing it, you could just do score plus plus, which is just taking score and adding 1 to it. And then we could just debug.log the score. And there you go. When I collect the score, you can see it says 1. If we get another coin, now it says 2. So as we pick up these coins, the score goes up. And if we were to implement something like health, it's going to be the same thing, right? We're going to have an integer for health. When we collide with the enemy, we're going to have to lose that health. The only difference with health is it cannot go below 0. We have to account for that. Which I'm going to let you guys kind of figure that out. But it's going to be very similar to just making the variable and then subtracting or adding to it when something happens. In this case, when we collide with the coin. But right now, we have our score, and we're debugging it. Imagine I built this game, sent it off to my friend to play it. They're going to have no idea what their score is because this debug is not going to show up in a real executable file, right? And we need some UI to actually show it. So let's take a quick look at Unity's UI system. Again, we're just going to deal with the basics of it for this project, and then, we'll expand on it as you guys start working on other projects. You can right-click our hierarchy, and you can see there's a tab called UI, a folder called UI, and we want to add something from in here. I'm going to add a text You might see that under legacy, there's text button drop down input field. Don't use these. Use whatever's in this main page. These legacy things are old, and at some point, Unity plans on removing them. But they're here, I guess, for compatibility reasons. Like if you had an old project that still used these and you don't want it to break, that's why they keep them around. But we want to be using what their newest things are. In this case, I want a piece of text on my screen, and I'm going to use this text-text mesh pro. We click to add it, and if this is your first time using UI, you will get this little importer pop up that says TMP importer. Just click the button and let it import the Text Mesh Pro stuff. Again, this is like a package, and Unity just starts without it, and they let us add it. And I think this one's a little weird because most games have some form of 2D UI. Why would you make that a package? But I'm not the one making Unity. It is what it is. So you'll see that the first time. And when it adds it, if we look at our hierarchy, I only added the text, but it added something else in there. It added something called a canvas. And inside the canvas, there is a text, parentheses TMP, which is the Text Mesh Pro text. Before we take a look at it, I'm just going to rename this text. I like to name my UI objects with what they are, and then underscore what, why they're there. So in this case, this text is a text, so I name it TXT. Underscore, what is this text? Why is it here? It's going to be the score, so TXT underscore. I just like to name things like that. Keeps it organized in my head. So if we take a look at this text doesn't have a regular transform component like all our other game objects. It has something called a rect transform. And it has way more options than just like scale, rotation, position. It's got position, it's got width and height, it's got anchors to it, and then it also has rotation and scale. If I click on the canvas and I hit F, you'll see that the canvas like really far out. And this canvas here represents the screen, that 2D screen where our mouse exists, that screen space. This canvas represents that screen space. In fact, if I look at the canvas, under render mode, it says screen space. So what it's doing, screen space overlay, it's overlaying a 2D image essentially, which is going to be our UI, on top of our screen space. And one way we can kind of see what that is also, if I change the size of my game here, right? I'm changing the size of the viewport. We can see that the canvas is also changing size. So that canvas represents our screen space, what we see on our 2D screen. So if I was to take this text and like move it in here, it's all good, right? I can see it on the screen. But as my screen changes size, that text is going to vanish and like go away, right? It's going to be hidden behind. In fact, if my screen was too big, all of a sudden that text that was kind of in the corner is no longer in the corner, right? So if it was like this, text is in the corner, someone's playing with an ultra wide, well, now that text is stuck in the middle. And so that brings us to the idea that with the UI, we don't just position them, but we have to tell Unity what their relationship to the screen is. And this comes with the thing of anchoring it. If you guys have made like a website before or done any kind of like web development, it's a big thing in that. Unity's UI works the same way. Unreal's UI works the same way. It's just the way we deal with displaying UI on different screen sizes. So where it says rect transform, there is a little square here. And right now it says middle and center. And what that's saying is wherever, it's just, what that's saying is where I want the text to kind of be anchored. In this case, in the middle of the screen. So, if I had the text in the middle, I know it's hard to see. It's just kind of staying there. And that's the exact same thing. What it's saying is in relation to the middle of the screen right now, my text is going to be pinned there. So as we move the screen size, the center of the screen doesn't move. So the text is not going to move. But you can see now as the center kind of moves, the text moves with it. I don't want it to be pinned to the center. I want my UI to display on the top left. So I want it to be pinned to the top left. If I open this up and I click now the top left, right? Top and left. And now I move my screen. You can see my top left. I'm moving the top left, right? This area is now scaling and the UI is moving with it. If I was to scale the right side, it doesn't move with it. A quick way that we can also because I want my UI to be positioned here. A quick way to do that is you hold Shift and you hold Alt and then you click that, and you can see it just pins my text to the top there. We can move it a little bit to give it a little bit of padding. And there you go. Now that text is kind of stuck there. Doesn't matter how the screen scales. Someone's playing with a super big screen, super small screen. It's always just going to be pinned to that top left corner. And we can see it right there. This text comes in with a text component because I made it. I added a text. It has this text component where you can see this big box that says new text. Whatever we type in there is what's going to show on the screen. So mine would say something like this, right? Score is 0, and then as they get points, it's going to increase in score. The other little bit of UI I just want to add is some text to say game over. So for now, I'm just going to copy and paste this, and I'll change it to txt underscore game over. Go back to our scene. Now this text, I want it to display in the middle of the screen and say game over. You can see that the text is kind of bigger than the box. We can change the width and the height of the box to kind of be as big as we want. And we can turn up the font size just to make it look more intimidating. And you can also add things like make it bold, italics, you can underline it if you want. There's different options here that you would find in something like Word. Finally, just because of how my scene is right now where there's a lot of white in the background, I'm just going to change these text colors, which I can do with the vertex color, to something like red, just so that we can actually see it on the screen. Make sure that our game over is anchored to the center of the screen. So I'm going to open up the anchor tool, Shift Alt, move it to the center. And then I'll also align the text to the center as well. And there you go. This is kind of like my game UI. When I hit play, we can see it's all there. Okay. So now, to actually make use of it, I don't want my game over to be showing all the time. It's going to only show it when we have a game over. So I'm going to turn this off. I'm just going to hit the little check mark next to the name of it. And that's just going to set its active, whether it's enabled or not, to on or off. We'll turn it off. Score can be as is. Back in our player, we're going to need a reference to these two things. So I'm going to make a serialized field, a game object for the game over text. I'll call it game over text. And this is going to be a game object because we're not setting the text of this game over object. We're just going to be turning it on and off, right? So I want a reference to the whole game object so that in code, I can flip this switch. The score, on the other hand, I don't really care about the game object. I'm only interested in this text mesh pro component. So I'm only going to get a reference to that. So I know that normally when we look at a component and then reference the name of the object, it's the exact same. It's a little different for the text mesh pro component. It's going to be called text mesh pro u GUI. And I will call it score text. So for the game over text should be fairly simple. When we die, we just want to set the game over text dot set active to true. And that's the set active function. That's what controls that little checkbox there. So we're just setting that checkbox to true, so it goes from off to on. And for the score, finally, when we do score plus plus, I'm also going to say score text dot text. So that's the text inside the score text component is equal to score colon and the score. So there's going to be score colon, a little space bar, and then whatever the score is. So let's see if this all worked just fine. Before I hit play, make sure we set the objects here. So game over text is going to go over here, and the score text is going to go over here. Let's check the score first. I collect a coin, we can see our score goes up. And now let's check our game over text. There you go. The player's gone. We can't control it. And we see game over there. Awesome. Just one last quick thing. Right now, when we die, we can't like quite play the game again, right? So let's just change that so that we can kind of respawn and we can play the game again. I'm going to do it in a very simple way. All I'm going to do is kind of reload the entire scene, basically restart the level. And that's kind of the easiest way to have this, have the game kind of restart when we die. And to do that, I'm going to go back to my script. And I'm going to cover this if cannot move, return inside some braces so we can add some more lines into it. And basically, if we can't move, that means we're dead, right? If my player left clicks anywhere on the screen, let's reload the level. So if mouse dot current dot left button dot read value, and the way this read value works for left button is that when we're not clicking the left mouse button, it's 0. When we click the left mouse button, it becomes 1. So if read value is greater than 0, basically if it's, when we click it, it's going to be 1. 1 is greater than 0. Then we want to reload the scene. And also this read value is a function, so we need to put parentheses there. We can load the scene up using a special class called a scene manager, which has a function called load scene. This load scene takes a parameter, either takes a string, which is going to be the name of the scene, or it takes an integer, which is going to be the index of the scene. We don't have to worry about the index of the scene, but it takes a string. That's going to be the name of the scene. So in my case, if I look back at my Unity window, my scene's name is Dodge Game. So I could come here and say Dodge Game. But that's not the best way. We don't want to just hard code something when we don't need to. Instead, the scene manager will also tell us the current scene's name, because I just want to load this scene again, right? So I could do scene manager dot get active scene. So what is the current scene? Dot name. So the scene manager, what is the current scene? Tell me its name, and then load that scene again. And then just to make it a little more obvious, I'm going to say game over. Left click to restart. Restart. And again, all this typography, the design of it could be a lot better, but that is not the purpose, I guess, of this tutorial. Oops, and I forgot to set it to unactive. So let's turn that off and try again. We die. It says left click to restart. I left click, and there you go. The level starts again. Our score is 0, and we can play the game again. Okay, awesome. So we've taken this 2D game, we've made like the basic inputs, we've added on to it by having obstacles spawn. There's 2 different types of obstacle, an enemy, a coin, which are treated differently based on what we collide with. We have the difficulty increasing in one way, which is the spawn timer. The longer we play the game, I know that some of the values need to be adjusted because this game, at least in my mind, is very slow. But that's fine. Those are things we can adjust later on. We have all the code in place, right? And then finally we ended it by adding UI. We added some sound effects too, and the game restarts. There's a loop to this game. So really, this is the most smallest thing you can make that we can call, a mostly finished game. It has all the elements of a game to it. The only thing you guys are expected to add to this would be that health, right? So just like you have score, you're going to have another text that says health, and the enemy should affect the health instead of just popping up game over when you die. It should reduce the health, and then if that health is gone, then we can pop up game over, you're dead, and restart it. Thank you guys for watching.